Arthur Pendleton was the kind of man who spent 45 minutes every Sunday meticulously arranging his pill organizer for the week. Not that he had any actual prescriptions, just a carefully curated array of over-the-counter supplements, antacids, and what he called preventative measures. In his apartment's medicine cabinet, bottles of hand sanitizer stood in perfect formation, arranged by alcohol content percentage. At 52, Arthur had spent 30 years working as an inventory specialist at Megastorage Warehouse No. 7 in Cleve-Troitberg, a city whose name had been the unfortunate result of a three-way municipal merger decades earlier. The merger had combined the worst qualities of three declining industrial centers: Cleveland's river that occasionally caught fire, Detroit's abandoned factories, and Pittsburgh's perpetual gray haze, all without any of their redeeming charms. Arthur's morning routine never varied. He would wake at 5:43 a.m. precisely, brush his teeth for exactly 2 minutes with an electric toothbrush featuring a UV sanitizing case, and prepare breakfast: 2 pieces of lightly browned toast, never from the end of the loaf, a single scrambled egg, cooked in a non-stick pan that he replaced every 6 months due to chemical concerns, and coffee brewed through a paper filter he inspected for microscopic tears before use. His commute to work took him past the Chemalloy processing plant, the abandoned petrosynth facility, which still leaked mysterious fluids into the groundwater, and finally along Refinery Row, where 5 competing petroleum companies had spent decades engaged in what locals called the Great Stink-Off. The specific bouquet of industrial emissions changed daily, depending on wind direction and which company was violating which environmental regulation that particular morning. Arthur didn't mind. In fact, he had developed an uncanny ability to determine the day's weather forecast based solely on which industrial scent dominated his morning drive. Sulfur notes, with hints of ammonia, definitely rain by noon. That peculiar blend of acetone and burnt plastic, clear skies but humid. At work, Arthur wore an N95 respirator mask long before global pandemics made such accessories fashionable. His co-workers had initially mocked him, then grown accustomed to his muffled voice reciting inventory numbers from behind black silicone and white filter material. The warehouse stored everything from dollar store cleaning products to mystery barrels labeled only with hazard symbols and serial numbers. Just another day in paradise, Arthur would mutter each morning while donning his mask, a ritual phrase that held neither resentment nor joy, merely acknowledgement. It was after a particularly long night shift that Arthur's life took an unexpected turn. The loading dock had received a shipment of scented bath products that had broken open during transit, filling the warehouse with a cloying artificial strawberry smell that gave most workers headaches. Arthur, however, had simply adjusted the straps on his mask and continued counting boxes. By the time his shift ended at 11:30 p.m., Arthur was exhausted. He trudged across the nearly empty supermarket parking lot where he always left his car, the warehouse lot being too small for employee vehicles. The flickering fluorescent lights of the Save More grocery cast a sickly glow across the cracked asphalt. Arthur fumbled with his keys, mentally calculating whether his current bottle of aspirin would last through the weekend or if he should stock up tomorrow. That's what happened. A column of light, impossibly clean and white, enveloped him without warning. There was no sound, no dramatic wind, no chance to run. Just sudden, perfect illumination and the overwhelming scent of what Arthur immediately recognized as industrial-grade disinfectant. His last thought before consciousness slipped away was mild annoyance that he might be late filing his weekly expense report. Arthur awoke in perfect whiteness, not the dingy off-white of his apartment ceiling or the yellowish fluorescent white of the warehouse, but a pristine, almost painful white that seemed to emanate from every surface. He was lying on his back on what felt like a perfectly flat surface, neither cold nor warm, neither soft nor hard, just there. "What the?" he began, then stopped as he realized 2 things simultaneously. He was being held in place by some invisible force that allowed only the slightest movement, and his mask was gone. In a panic, Arthur tried to cover his nose and mouth with his hands, only to find his arms restricted by the same invisible restraints. His breathing quickened as he calculated how many microbes he might be inhaling with each unfiltered breath. "Please do not experience distress," came a voice from everywhere and nowhere. It was perfectly modulated, neither male nor female, with each syllable pronounced with unnatural precision. "You're being monitored for your safety and comfort." Arthur squinted against the whiteness. Gradually, he began to discern shapes, floating, translucent spheres approximately 3 feet in diameter, hovering at different heights around what he now realized was a raised platform where he lay. The spheres pulsed with gentle internal light in colors that seemed just outside his ability to name. "Who are you? Where am I?" Arthur demanded, falling back on the questions he supposed were traditional in alien abduction scenarios. Not that he had ever believed in such things. Arthur was much more concerned with the very real threats of BPA in food containers and the carcinogenic potential of his cell phone. One sphere moved closer, its internal light shifting to a pale blue pattern. "We are Xyler. You are in a temporary examination chamber aboard our research vessel." The voice now seemed to come from this particular sphere. "Your designation in your native language approximates to Purity 7. I am a primary biologics researcher for this expedition." Arthur frowned. "Am I getting overtime pay for this? Because my shift ended at 11:30, and this definitely counts as work-related inconvenience." The sphere pulsed briefly before responding. "Your concept of overtime pay is not applicable to this interaction. You have been temporarily removed from your environment for scientific assessment. You will be returned once our data collection is complete." Another sphere drifted forward, this one with internal light patterns in soft green. "I am the entity your translation device would render as Clarity 12. I specialize in psychological response patterns of developing species." Arthur struggled against his invisible restraints, then gave up with a sigh. "Look, I don't mean to be rude, but this table thing is really uncomfortable. And is there any chance you could turn down the lights? It's like being trapped inside a refrigerator bulb." The spheres, the Xyler, seemed to communicate with each other in pulses of light too rapid and subtle for Arthur to follow. After a moment, the brightness in the room dimmed slightly, and the platform beneath him adjusted, conforming somewhat to the shape of his body. "Better?" asked Purity 7. "A bit," Arthur admitted, "but it's awfully dry in here. My sinuses are going to be a mess. Do you have any idea what the humidity level is? And what about particulate count? I have very sensitive lungs, you know." Again, the spheres pulsed in their silent communication. "The atmospheric conditions are maintained at optimal purity levels," Purity 7 stated. "All possible contaminants have been removed. The air you breathe is perfectly clean." Arthur sniffed doubtfully. "Nothing's perfectly clean. There's always something. Dust mites, spores, volatile compounds. Even in hospital clean rooms, there are particles." "Not here," said Clarity 12 with what almost sounded like pride. "Our filtration systems exceed your species' technological understanding by approximately 47,000 of your Earth years." "Well, it's making my skin itchy," Arthur complained. "Too clean isn't good for you, you know. The hygiene hypothesis and all that. Our immune systems need something to do." This comment triggered another flurry of light pulses among the Xyler spheres. Arthur had the distinct impression he'd said something unexpected. "Your statement contradicts our understanding of biological preference," said a third sphere that hadn't introduced itself. Its internal light was a soft violet. "All known sentient species seek environmental purity and protection from contaminants." Arthur shrugged as much as his restraints would allow. "I mean, sure, nobody wants to swim in toxic waste, but a little dirt never killed anyone. Well, except for those flesh-eating bacteria cases. And botulism. And the plague, I guess. But my point stands. More rapid communication among the spheres followed. Arthur took the opportunity to look around more carefully. The room, if it could be called that, had no visible walls, ceiling, or floor. The whiteness simply extended in all directions until it faded into an indeterminate horizon. The only objects were the platform where he lay and perhaps a dozen of the translucent Xyler spheres. "We wish to understand your species better," Purity 7 finally said. You will be subjected to a series of non-invasive assessments. These will cause no permanent harm. The non-invasive part sounds good, Arthur said cautiously. But I should warn you, I have a lot of allergies. Or potential allergies. I haven't been formally tested for most of them, but better safe than sorry. That's what I always say. Your concerns are noted, said Clarity, 12. We will begin with basic physiological baseline readings. What followed was several hours of what Arthur could only describe as the most thorough physical examination of his life. Beams of colored light scanned him from head to toe. The invisible restraints would occasionally adjust, moving his limbs into different positions before returning them to their resting state. Occasionally, a small device would materialize next to him, hovering over specific parts of his body while emitting soft humming sounds. Throughout the process, Arthur maintained a running commentary of complaints, questions, and observations. That tickles. Is that radiation? That feels like radiation. Are you recording my cholesterol levels? Because I've been meaning to cut back on eggs. Do you have a bathroom? Because humans have needs, you know. Is it getting colder in here? Or is it just me? The Xyler responded to each query with patient, clinical answers, though Arthur noted that their replies became progressively shorter as time went on. They seemed particularly baffled by his simultaneous concern over theoretical health risks and his apparent acceptance of the very real environmental hazards of his home city. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably closer to 4 hours, the physical examination concluded. A small platform rose from the featureless floor, bearing what looked like a glass of water. You may consume this if you require hydration, Purity, 7 said. It is perfectly compatible with your biology. Arthur eyed the glass suspiciously. What's in it? Just water? No fluoride? No chlorine? What about mineral content? It is H2O in its purest form, replied Purity, 7. Distilled water? That's not good for you, Arthur said with authority. It leaches minerals from your body. I read about it online. Another round of pulsing lights among the Xyler. Would you prefer water with impurities? Clarity, 12 asked, sounding genuinely confused. I prefer spring water with a balanced mineral profile, Arthur said primly. Or at least some electrolytes. But I'll take what I can get. He sipped cautiously, then made a face. No taste at all. Weird. We will now proceed to nutritional preference assessment, announced Purity, 7. A series of three-dimensional images appeared in the air before Arthur. Perfect representations of various Earth foods. Each rotated slowly, allowing view from all angles. Please indicate which of these you would willingly consume, instructed Clarity, 12. The first image showed a perfectly ripe apple, its red skin gleaming. Arthur frowned. Depends. Is it organic? Was it treated with pesticides? Some conventional apples have up to 47 different pesticide residues, you know. The Xyler conferred briefly. This hypothetical apple has been grown without synthetic chemical applications, Purity, 7 clarified. Then yes, I'd eat that, but I'd wash it first. And probably peel it, just to be safe. The next image showed a hamburger on a sesame seed bun with lettuce, tomato, and condiments. Fast food? Not a chance. Arthur said immediately. Do you know what they put in those things? Pink slime, additives, preservatives. The buns have like 30 ingredients. Bread should have 4 ingredients, maximum. The image changed to a beautifully presented plate of sushi. Raw fish? Absolutely not, Arthur declared. Parasitic risk. Mercury contamination. No thank you. This pattern continued for dozens of food items. Arthur rejected many foods that appeared perfectly healthy due to his concerns about farming methods, processing techniques, or theoretical contamination. Yet when presented with images of processed snack foods, bright orange cheese puffs, sugary breakfast cereals, microwavable pizza, he often responded with casual acceptance. Oh, cheese puffs are fine once in a while. They're not great for you, but they've never made me sick. Those frozen burritos? Yeah, I eat those all the time on night shifts. 2 minutes in a microwave, and you're good to go. The Xyler seemed increasingly perplexed by Arthur's inconsistent standards. After the food assessment concluded, There is a longer than usual period of light pulse communication among them. Your nutritional selection criteria appear contradictory. Clarity, 12, finally stated. You reject naturally occurring food sources due to theoretical contamination risks, yet readily accept highly processed substances containing numerous synthetic compounds. Arthur shrugged. Better the devil you know, I guess. Besides, processed foods have to meet safety standards. Nature's just doing whatever it wants out there. No quality control. The next phase of testing involved environmental stimuli. The white room would occasionally transform, projecting immersive environments around Arthur while monitoring his physiological responses. A peaceful forest scene with filtered sunlight and gentle breezes initially caused Arthur's stress levels to spike. Pollen count must be through the roof, he muttered, imagining he could feel his sinuses swelling. And tick season 2, probably. Yet when the simulation changed to a crowded urban street with blaring horns, jostling pedestrians, and visible air pollution, his vital signs actually stabilized. Now, this is more like it, he said, visibly relaxing. Remind me of downtown at rush hour. Most baffling to the Xyler was Arthur's response to their controlled microbial environment test. They created a simulation of what they considered a moderately contaminated setting, a humid room with elevated spore counts and non-harmful bacteria. Arthur, who had spent the previous hour complaining about potential dust mites in the clean room, actually sighed with contentment. This humidity feels great for my sinuses. Reminds me of summer back home when the processing plant lets off steam. After these tests concluded, there was a prolonged conference among the Xyler researchers. Their light pulses increased in speed and intensity, occasionally flashing in patterns that suggested disagreement or confusion. Finally, Purity 7 approached Arthur again. Your responses do not conform to any standard model of biological preference. We must understand this anomaly. What anomaly? Arthur asked. I'm a perfectly average guy. You exhibit extreme concern regarding hypothetical contaminants while demonstrating adaptation to objectively harmful environments, said Clarity, 12. This contradiction is difficult to categorize. We will proceed to advanced psychological assessment, Purity 7 announced. The lights dimmed further. Arthur found his platform reclining until he was nearly horizontal. A soft hum filled the space. You will now experience a series of sensory and emotional stimuli, explained Clarity, 12. These are designed to measure core psychological responses. We assure you they are temporary and will cause no lasting harm. Is this going to take long? Arthur asked, because I really should get back to check my mail. I'm expecting a package with a new air purifier, and the delivery guys in my building have sticky fingers. The process will be completed efficiently, Purity 7 assured him. What followed was a carefully orchestrated series of stimuli designed to trigger primal emotional responses. Sudden loud noises, flashes of light, sensations of falling. Throughout these tests, Arthur showed surprisingly muted reactions. When a thunderous boom echoed through the chamber, loud enough to trigger instinctive fear responses in most species, Arthur merely flinched slightly. Could you give a little warning next time? He grumbled. But honestly, that's nothing compared to when the chemical plant has one of its controlled releases. Those awake you from a dead sleep at 3 in the morning. Visual stimuli designed to provoke disgust, images of decay and contamination, merely prompted clinical observations from Arthur. Oh yeah, that looks like the mold that grows in the corner of the warehouse during the wet season. We got a pool going on what color it'll turn next. How about $5 on radioactive green for next month? After hours of testing with increasingly intense stimuli, the Xyler researchers appeared to reach some sort of consensus. The light pulses among them took on a more ordered, unified pattern. Purity 7 approached Arthur's platform. We have determined that standard assessment protocols are insufficient for your case. We will proceed to the final evaluation method. Does that mean we're almost done? Arthur asked hopefully, because my back is killing me, and I'm pretty sure I'm developing a rash from whatever material this platform is made of. The final assessment is our most advanced method, continued Purity 7, ignoring Arthur's complaints. It is reserved for specimens that defy conventional categorization. A sleek metallic device materialized in the air. It resembled nothing so much as an elegant, elongated perfume atomizer, glowing with a subtle inner light that shifted between violet and indigo. This will release a specially formulated compound into your immediate environment, explained Clarity, 12. It is designed to directly stimulate the fear response centers of your brain. Arthur frowned. Is it going to stain my clothes? Because this is my newest uniform shirt. The compound leaves no physical residue, assured Purity, 7. It interfaces directly with your neurological system to access primal fear responses that may be suppressed by your unusual psychological adaptations. Primal fear? Arthur repeated dubiously. Like, scared of the dark? Scared of heights? That kind of thing. Much more fundamental, said Clarity, 12. The compound accesses the deepest evolutionary fear responses, those that transcend cultural conditioning or individual experience. It has proven effective across 17 different sentient species classifications. Arthur shrugged as much as his restraints would allow. Well, I guess we all have to face our fears sometime. But if this gives me a headache, I'm going to be very annoyed. The Xyler retreated to what they clearly considered a safe distance. A transparent barrier, invisible until that moment, shimmered into existence between Arthur and the alien researchers. The metallic device remained floating near Arthur, rotating slowly, initiating multidimensional psychofear gas release in 3, 2, 1. Announced Purity, 7. The device emitted a soft hiss. A delicate mist of pale violet emerged from its tip, expanding gently into the air around Arthur. The mist was designed to be colorless and odorless to most species. Its visibility to human eyes was merely a side effect of its particular molecular structure interacting with Earth's atmospheric conditions. The Xyler observers monitored Arthur's vital signs with intense focus. According to their substantial research, the next few moments should show dramatic changes: elevated heart rate, respiratory distress, pupil dilation, massive spikes in brain activity, particularly in the amygdala region. Arthur inhaled deeply as the mist enveloped him. His heart rate decreased slightly. His breathing deepened and became more regular. His brain activity in the amygdala remained unchanged, while activity in the areas associated with memory and pleasure noticeably increased. The Xyler's internal lights flickered in confusion. Arthur closed his eyes and inhaled again, more deliberately this time. A smile, small but unmistakable, spread across his face. He opened his eyes and looked directly at the transparent barrier where the Xyler researchers hovered. Oh, this. He breathed in deeply again. Smells like home. Just like that time, the polyvinyl chloride plant down the street caught fire. Really takes me back. The silence that followed was absolute. The Xyler froze in place, their internal lights dimming to the barest flicker. The translation device remained silent for so long that Arthur wondered if it had malfunctioned. Did I say something wrong? He finally asked. More silence. Then, very slowly, the Xyler began to pulse their lights again, but in patterns that seemed erratic, almost panicked. The compound. It reminds you of home. Clarity, 12 eventually managed, the translator struggling to convey the appropriate tone. Yeah, Arthur said, inhaling again appreciatively. Summer of 97. Big fire at the plastic factory. They evacuated 3 blocks, but my apartment was just outside the zone. The air had this exact same smell for weeks afterward. I was working double shifts then, saving up for a new car. He smiled nostalgically. Good times. Another long silence from the Xyler. Perhaps there is a malfunction in the compound distribution system. Purity, 7 finally suggested. The sphere hovered closer to the device, examining it with what appeared to be great care. The formula may have degraded or been improperly synthesized. Everything is functioning within optimal parameters, countered another Xyler. Its voice transmitted as slightly deeper through the translation device. The compound is identical to that used in all previous applications. Then increase the concentration suggested Clarity, 12. Perhaps the subject requires a more potent stimulus. The device hummed briefly, then released a much denser cloud of violet mist. This concentration would have sent most species into a state of absolute terror, a fear so primal and overwhelming that it would temporarily override all rational thought. Arthur sniffed the air again. His expression shifted from nostalgic contentment to thoughtful consideration. Now, it's more like the city dump in August, he observed, when they're turning the compost piles. Bit stronger, but still familiar. He chuckled. This has taken me on quite the tour of hometown smells. Got anything that smells like the river when they're dredging it? That's a classic Cleve-Troitberg bouquet right there. The Xyler's lights pulsed frantically. Their movements became less orderly, more agitated. Through the translation device came fragments of conversation. Impossible response pattern. Neurological structure must be fundamentally different. Potential contamination risk to the vessel. Abort the standard protocol immediately. Finally, Purity 7 addressed Arthur directly. We will discontinue the chemical stimulus approach. It appears ineffective for your species, or perhaps specifically for you. The violet mist rapidly dissipated, extracted by some unseen ventilation system. Arthur looked almost disappointed. Shame, he said. That was actually kind of nice. Reminded me of simpler times. We will attempt alternative assessment methods, stated Clarity, 12, its synthetic voice now carrying an unmistakable edge of tension. The white room darkened dramatically. Before Arthur appeared a series of vivid, three-dimensional projections, images carefully constructed from the Xyler's vast database of universal fears. A massive black hole consuming a planet, the destruction rendered in perfect scientific detail. Huh, neat, Arthur commented. Looks like that science show I sometimes catch when I can't sleep. A towering, alien entity with too many limbs and eyes, its form suggesting geometries that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. Reminds me of that seafood special they serve at the diner near work, Arthur observed. Never trusted it myself. Seafood in a landlocked city? Recipe for disaster. An endless abyss with distant, echoing screams. That's just like the customer service line at the Department of Motor Vehicles, Arthur said with a shudder. Now, that's genuinely unpleasant. Had to spend 3 hours there last year getting my license renewed. The Xyler continued their visual assault, presenting increasingly disturbing scenarios. Global destruction, existential isolation, cosmic horror. Arthur responded to each with either mild interest or analogies to everyday inconveniences in Cleve-Troitberg. After exhausting their visual database without achieving the desired fear response, the Xyler researchers retreated into another lengthy conference, their light pulses more chaotic than ever. During this time, Arthur cleared his throat. "Excuse me," he called out. "I don't mean to interrupt your light show over there, but is there any chance I could get something to eat? It's been hours, and I usually have a protein bar around this time. Low sugar, high fiber, keeps me regular." The Xyler ignored his request, deep in their silent communication. Finally, Clarity 12 broke away from the group and approached the barrier. "We wish to understand more about your home," the alien said. "This place that has prepared you for our most potent fear stimulus." Arthur shrugged. "Not much to tell. Cleve-Troitberg's just a regular city. Been there all my life. It's had its problems, sure, but where doesn't? Please describe these problems," Clarity 12 urged. "Oh, the usual. Air quality alerts every other day in summer. That weird foam that shows up in the reservoir sometimes. The North Side neighborhood where everyone's got that mysterious rash. The sinkhole district where the mining company denies responsibility. Traffic's a nightmare, of course. And the noise from the freight trains and processing plants never really stops." Arthur paused, then added proudly, "But we got the third best emergency response time for industrial accidents in the tri-state area. And the high school football team made state semifinals last year." As Arthur spoke, the Xyler began accessing their vast database of information about Earth. They had collected this data passively over decades, but had never before had reason to focus specifically on the environmental conditions of human industrial centers. What they discovered horrified them in ways their sophisticated fear gas never could. Atmospheric pollution levels exceeding safety thresholds by factors of hundreds or thousands. Waterways containing cocktails of industrial chemicals, heavy metals, pharmaceutical residues, and microplastics. Cancer clusters, respiratory disease epidemics, and birth defects tracking perfectly with industrial zone boundaries. Generations of humans adapting to progressively degrading conditions. Their baseline for normal shifting with each decade of accumulated toxicity. Most disturbing of all was the psychological data. Humans in these environments didn't merely tolerate these conditions. They developed cultural and emotional attachments to them. The specific blend of industrial emissions became the smell of home. The distinctive color of chemically tainted water became just how our river looks. The constant background of industrial noise became a lullaby for children born there. While the Xyler processed this information, Arthur continued chatting about his city, his tone casual and occasionally even affectionate. He described neighborhoods by their distinctive industrial odors. He recounted community events organized around factory shift changes. He explained the local custom of judging the weather by which colors appeared in the sunset, colors created by particulate matter in the atmosphere. And that's how you know it's going to rain the next day, Arthur concluded. If the sunset's more orange than red, the air pressure's dropping. Works better than the weather app, honestly. The Xyler had gone very still during Arthur's monologue. When they finally responded, their internal lights had dimmed to the palest possible glow. "We have reached a consensus," Purity 7 announced, the translation device rendering the voice as unnaturally flat. "This assessment session is terminated, effective immediately." "Oh, does that mean I can go home?" Arthur asked hopefully. "Yes," said Clarity 12. "You will be returned to your origin point." Before we proceed with relocation, Purity 7 added, "We wish to extend an offer." Arthur raised his eyebrows. "What kind of offer?" "We have identified several worlds within our protectorate that would be suitable for human habitation," explained Purity 7. "These environments feature optimal atmospheric composition, pure water sources, balanced ecosystems, and complete absence of industrial toxins. We would facilitate your immediate relocation to such a world where you could live in perfect ecological harmony." Arthur frowned. "What's the catch?" "There is no catch," said Clarity 12. "This offer is extended as compensation for your participation in our research." "So, this other planet," Arthur said slowly. "What does it smell like?" The Xyler paused. "Smell like," repeated Purity 7. "Yeah. Does the air there have any particular smell? Like, does it smell like ozone after a thunderstorm near the transformer station? Or fresh bread from Manny's Bakery on 3rd Street? Or that weird metallic tang the air gets when the steel mill changes filters?" Another pause. "The atmospheres of these worlds are completely pure," Clarity 12 explained. "They contain only the optimal mixture of gases for respiration, with no extraneous particles to create smells." Arthur made a face. "No smells at all? That sounds awful. How would you know if it's going to rain? Or which direction the wind is blowing from? Or if your neighbor is grilling burgers? No, thank you. You prefer an environment with contaminants?" Purity 7 asked, the translator somehow conveying incredulity. "I prefer an environment with character," Arthur corrected. "Somewhere that feels like somewhere, you know? Not just some sterile nothing." He gestured vaguely at the white room around him. "No offense, but this place gives me the creeps. Too clean. Unnatural." The Xyler conferred briefly, their lights pulsing in patterns that seemed almost agitated. "Very well," Purity 7 finally said. "We will respect your decision and return you to your point of origin." "Great," Arthur said with evident relief. "And just so you know, I'm definitely going to be late for work today. So if you could provide some kind of note explaining where I've been, that would be helpful. My supervisor's a real stickler about documentation." "We do not provide documentation of our research activities," Clarity 12 stated. Arthur sighed. Worth a try. I'll just tell them I had car trouble again. The return process was remarkably similar to the abduction. A column of white light, the scent of industrial-grade disinfectant, and a moment of disorientation. When Arthur's vision cleared, he was standing in the exact same spot in the supermarket parking lot. The early morning sun was just beginning to rise, suggesting that in Earth time, only a few hours had passed. He patted his pockets, confirming that his wallet, keys, and phone were all present. He checked his watch, 5:17 a.m. Just enough time to get home, shower, and maybe catch a quick nap before his next shift started at noon. As Arthur walked to his car, he noticed a distinctive odor in the morning air. The sulfurous emissions from the chemical processing plant mixing with the deep, oily smell of the freight yard and the vaguely sweet scent of the corn syrup facility on the riverfront. In the distance, the city's skyline was barely visible through a brownish haze that would burn off by mid-morning, revealing buildings stained by decades of industrial residue. Arthur took a deep breath and smiled. It wasn't the pure, filtered air of the alien vessel, and it certainly wasn't the pristine atmosphere of those paradisiacal planets they'd offered. It was complex, probably toxic, definitely unique, and utterly familiar. It was home. Back aboard their vessel, the Xyler researchers updated their extensive database on Earth and its dominant species. Where humans had previously been classified under developing sentience, standard assessment protocols applicable, a new designation was created. Extreme environmental adaptation species, Omega level caution, potential conceptual contaminant. The data entry included several warning notes. Capable of normalizing conditions that would be classified as toxic by 99.7% of known sentient species. Demonstrates backward threat assessment. Fears theoretical microthreats while embracing macro-level environmental hazards. Forms emotional attachments to specific contamination signatures. Potential mimetic vulnerability for species with purification focus. And finally, a directive marked with the highest priority classification. Maintain maximum quarantine protocols for all Earth samples. Plan it to be marked for avoidance in all future cataloging missions. Most importantly, under no circumstances initiate sensory sharing protocols with human subjects, as their normalized perception of environmental hazards represents an existential risk to Xyler cognitive structures. The Xyler vessel adjusted its course to put maximum distance between itself and the small blue planet where fear smelled like home. In Cleve-Troitberg, Arthur Pendleton returned to his apartment, made himself a cup of instant coffee with artificial creamer and 3 packets of sugar substitute, and opened his window to let in the morning air. In the distance, the chemical plant's morning shift was starting up, sending a fresh plume of emission into the sky. A train whistle blew as it carried coal to the power station. Someone in the apartment below was cooking breakfast, the smell of frying meat mixing with the industrial bouquet outside. Arthur inhaled deeply, savoring the complex symphony of odors that had been the backdrop to his entire life. No place like home, he murmured, and settled into his worn armchair to enjoy his coffee before getting ready for another ordinary day in his extraordinarily toxic paradise.